In 5:15, I'd like to call the Monday, June 1st, Board of Public Works Sewer Utility Commission order. We stand up for pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
See no change. I look for motion.
So
Make
move
a
to
motion
adopt
to
the
approve.
agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. Ritchie to adopt the agenda as printed. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is. Any public input? Any public input? No public input. We'll slide on to approval of the April 13th Board of Public Works Sewer Utility Commission minutes. Look for motion.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, seconded by Mr. Dorsey to approve the April 13th Board of Public Works Sewer Utility Commission meetings. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Wastewater treatment plant notes? Ben?
Can you guys hear me? Does anybody have any questions regarding the write-up? Because Mike's here tonight to go over the majority of everything, and I will go over the CMAR after he's done with his presentation. Does anybody have any questions regarding the rest of the write-up? If not, then I guess we'll let Mike take over.
Thanks, Ben. No questions for Ben? We'll slide on to the next one. Review final facility plan for the wastewater treatment facility and recommend design to common council. Mike?
Thank you. Wait for it to fire up. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Can you all hear me okay? Appreciate the opportunity to be here. And so tonight, the intent is to talk about the material that was in what we call the facility plan. I think that was in your packet, 300 pages or on the order of that. And the intention of the conversation tonight is for me to kind of provide an explainer of what was in that big document so that you don't have to read all of that. And ultimately, I think the goal is to, after reviewing all of this information, hopefully Board of Public Works and ultimately the council feels like they're in a position to decide what the right solution is for the community, take action and move forward with a strategy that maintains compliance. But there's, I think, obviously there's quite a lot of information that we want to go through tonight, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have after I go through some prepared material. But having said that, if at any point in time you have any questions, please just interject, jump in, interrupt me. So this is very much to provide you information and to answer any questions that you have. I thought we'd start with, why we need to do something. Why do we need to do anything? Why does New London need to take action? And I don't want to go through, I've been here before and given some pretty long presentations, and I went through a lot of background information. I kind of want to set the stage or go through some of the drivers rather quickly because we've covered that at length. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. But there's really a convergence of 4 things at the moment. And I've got those listed on the screen. Number 1, and the most pressing, what's really driving the schedule that's really probably driven us all to get here tonight is because you have a new phosphorus regulation coming. We've talked about that in the past. You have probably since the 90s had a phosphorus limit. Now that phosphorus limit is being ratcheted down, and you need a technology that you don't have there to meet a lower phosphorus limit. Right now, your limit is 1 at times. At certain times of the year, that limit will go to 0.2, and your treatment facility is incapable of meeting that limit as it's configured today. So number 1, there's a compliance issue. We'll talk more about the timing of that compliance issue. It's actually a requirement of your WPPS program. So that's issue number 1. Number two, a number of you, quite a few of you, I think, toured the facility about a year ago and saw the condition that the facility is in. A lot of that infrastructure is 40 to 70 years old today. We're talking about a horizon that's 20 years. We'll talk about why we look at a generation at a time. But today, a lot of that infrastructure is 40 to 70 years old. It'll be 20 years older when we're at the end of the horizon that we're planning for. It'll become increasingly expensive and challenging to maintain that facility. Just the nature of it, time marches on. You need to continue to invest in that facility to keep it operating well. It's operating well today, but it's old, it's tired, and it's going to take some investment. Number three, we've talked about this in the past. It's obsolescence and complexity. That's what we call it. You have one of the most complicated facilities in the state, a lot of different unit processes. And as we've talked about in the past, that facility was really designed and built for a collection system and wastewater that's different than today. The service area has changed a lot. Technologies changed a lot. That existing facility was set up for a community that has very high industrial loadings. Those aren't in your service area anymore. It was also set up at a time when people would use fixed film processes much more readily than they do today. Today, those fixed film, we've talked about this in the past, but those fixed film processes, that tall tower, it's a trickling filter or roughing tower, that's actually counterproductive for the day, the regulatory age that we're in today, when you need to remove phosphorus, and everybody is expecting to need to remove nitrogen at some point in the future. So it's a plant that was designed for a different era. It's very complex. And the fourth thing is it doesn't have flexibility to accommodate some of the evolution that we can all expect, some of the evolution that we've seen. So your biosolids program has got increasingly expensive and increasingly challenging. Now they're hauling 20 miles away. Fields up by Freedom, you're seeing the cost escalate. Class B liquid programs of this size are challenging to maintain today, and we can only expect those pressures and those challenges, those logistical challenges, to increase moving forward. And then finally, we're all expecting, the department ratcheted down phosphorus limits. That's why we're here today. That's item number one. At some point, we can all expect that it's not a matter of if, but when the department is going to go after nitrogen. You're already sampling for the full suite of nitrogen compounds in your effluent. That's typically foreshadowing a future limit. They're gathering information for a future limit. And so we can one day expect, we don't know when, but we can one day expect that you'll need to remove total nitrogen, all the different nitrogen products, because that's another nutrient. Okay, so those four things are the four things that we tried to solve as we developed our treatment facility alternatives. Those are the drivers for these different alternatives that we're going to be reviewing later. So the question is, the plant's performing well. The question isn't really, should we invest? You're really in a situation, you have an old facility, you're facing these challenges, you are going to need to make an investment in your facility. And I think the question is not, do we need to invest? You need to invest, but should you continue reinvesting in that facility, that complex facility that doesn't have a lot of flexibility to meet the demands of the future? Or is it time to make an investment in something different that positions the community for not just today, but well into the future? Okay. Is it time to make the transition to a facility that's better configured for the future? Before I talk about all the different alternatives, I think we need to talk about the schedule. The schedule is important. That there are some important upcoming dates that we all want to be very mindful of. And dragging our feet could be expensive, and I'll explain why as we go along here. So what's driving the timing of all of this? In 2022, you got a permit, a reissued permit, and in that, were some compliance deadlines. The first one was in 2025. They gave you, so in the permit that they gave you in 2022, they said, guys, your phosphorus limit's going down. We finished our TMDL in the Wolf River, and your phosphorus limit's going to go down, and you need to start planning for it. So one of the things that was required in June of 25 last year was a PCAP, the Preliminary Compliance Alternatives Plan. That's what we talked about last year, and that's what we submitted to the department. This year, they need you to submit the final compliance alternative plan by the end of June. And if that requires significant improvements, a facility plan with it, or one and the same, a facility plan that is also an FCAP, a final compliance alternative plan. That's due at the end of June as well, okay? So that's a compliance schedule that's in your permit. And we're here tonight and you're in fine shape to meet that requirement. And then in your original permit, this is the big deadline, you will have a new phosphorus limit, a water quality based effluent limit. That's what the WQBL is. That was defined by the TMDL. In your existing permit, it says you need to be in compliance by July of 2029. Okay. We talked about how onerous that was going to be, that there really isn't enough time to build something, at least build something cost effectively. We reached out to the department and we said, look, these guys need filters. And the department said, if you need filters, then you get 9 months. Okay, the department gave you a 7-year compliance schedule to 2029. They said, if you need filters, we're going to extend that to 2031. That's the rule. If you need filters, you get 9 years. So as we sit here today, you need to, by July of 2031, need to be in compliance with this new phosphorus limit. Okay. The department hasn't reissued your permit yet, but we've got it in writing. That's something that the department needs to do yet. So 2031 is the target deadline. You must have something in place to comply with that limit. So what have we done? Talked about it briefly. Last year, we talked about the PCAP, the Preliminary Compliance Alternatives Plan. This year, we started working on the facility plan and the final compliance alternatives plan. And that really brings us to tonight. What's the next step? I think later you'll talk about final design, but the next step is to keep going with design, do final design. Final design means you will produce bidding documents that you could publicly bid the work associated with the improvements. Final design until, first quarter through first quarter of 2027. Then you go out to bids. We need to open bids before April 30th. We need to open bids before April 30th of next year for you to get your Clean Water Fund money. So that's the next step, final design and bidding. And then finally, construction. Here we're providing, you're contemplating some pretty big improvements. We want to give the contractors an ample amount of time so that you don't pay a premium for the work that you need them to do. Here we're showing, we've developed a schedule where we show the contractor could have 38 months and be done by the end of 2030, and that would give plant staff, so all the work would be done by the end of 2030, that would give plant staff early part of 2031 to get used to the new technology, dial it in, optimize it, and be in a good position to be in compliance by June. So we did the PCAP, we did the FCAP. Now it's time to do final design, get ready to bid it early next year, and then build it so that you've got everything you need by the time 2031 rolls around. But why are we in such a hurry? One could say, I look at that and it looks like we might have a little flexibility on the back end. We've got an extra 6 months. Could we talk about this some more? There's an expensive, that could be an expensive delay. So right now, we are targeting state fiscal year 2027 Clean Water Fund money. The fiscal year runs from July 1 through June 30th, okay? So we are targeting state fiscal year 2027 Clean Water Fund money. New London will get $3.1 million, $2 million or $2.1 million in general principal forgiveness. Principal forgiveness is like a grant. It's free money. You don't have to pay it back. You'll get $2.1 million in general principal forgiveness. You'll get $1 million because you need to meet a phosphorus limit, and your community qualifies for that. This is the last year where that will be as lucrative as it is. After state fiscal year 2027, the phosphorus funding may go away completely. The hardship or the $2 million pot of money, that will become more competitive. So you run the risk of getting considerably less than $3.1 million. And it could be, you know, there'll be a lot more competition for less money after state fiscal year 27. It's entirely in the realm of possibilities that that could go to zero or something much closer to zero. Okay, so that means we need to submit to get hardship, to get principal forgiveness money in state fiscal year 2027. We need to submit a Clean Water Fund application by the end of 2027. Excuse me, by September 30th. September 30th, we need to submit our Clean Water Fund application, and we need to submit documents, plans and specs good enough for the DNR to review and approve. Okay, September 30th is a very important deadline because $3.1 million hinges on it. Okay, does that make sense? It's a big deadline. And the future is uncertain. Okay, so what are all 300 of these pages? What's a facility plan? Number one, it is a gateway to Clean Water Fund money. And why do we want Clean Water Fund money? Well, number one, $3.1 million in principal forgiveness. Number two, the interest rate for you guys would be about 1.48%, I think. Okay, subsidized, federally subsidized. Everybody in New London has paid for that federal subsidy. It's your opportunity to get your share of that federally subsidized program that buys down the interest rate to it's less than 1.5%, which is a pretty good interest rate these days. So the facility plan is a requirement for the Clean Water Fund. It also defines the environmental impacts, but most importantly, the facility plan serves as your 20-year roadmap for your wastewater system. It looks at the current situation. It looks at what your future situation is. It identifies the challenges, the issues that you need to address, looks at potential solutions, alternatives, and then ultimately it recommends what the community feels, not what your consultant feels, what the community feels is the right investment for the community. Okay, and that's what that 300 some pages is that was in your packet. So we looked at 7 different alternatives. 4 of them are focused exclusively on the phosphorus issue. That's the most pressing, from a timing standpoint, that's the most pressing issue. So number 1 is do nothing. Sounds silly, but we had to prove to ourselves that we need to show the department that your existing facility can't meet that limit. That's well documented. You guys do really well, but you can't meet that limit. So do nothing is not a feasible alternative. The second one, we've talked about that in the past. There's a program called the Multi-Discharger Variance Program. It wasn't available the very first time we talked because it was going to end in 2027. It's been extended to 2035. Okay, so remember now your compliance deadline is 2031. This could buy you 4 years. Okay. And what you do is you pay for every pound of phosphorus. You pay for, I think you pay about today, it goes up every year. Today you pay about $67 a pound of phosphorus. Okay, you could use that. It's cost you about $70,000 a year. The money goes to the county. The county uses that money to do things out in the watershed to reduce phosphorus getting to the receiving stream. So it's a viable 4-year solution, about $70,000 today. But it doesn't address the other three things that we talked about: the age of your facility, the complexity, the obsolescence of it, and your lack of flexibility for the future. So come 2035, you would have to do something. And you'd need to start planning well in advance of that to do something, okay? And I think when we talked about it before, there wasn't a lot of interest. All that money's gone, and you get nothing in return for that other than the time. There's some other programs out there that we looked at in the report. It doesn't appear that you're well positioned to take advantage of those two type of outside the fence programs. One is adaptive management. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about that here, but for good reason. You're in a pretty big watershed. The only way adaptive management ultimately works is if you clean up the river. Okay, you would need to go into the watershed, put in a bunch of best management practices at different places around the watershed with the hope that the river ultimately gets to its phosphorus target. Okay, not realistic. It wouldn't happen just because of the actions of New London. And you would spend a whole bunch of money getting there. And then when you run out of time with adaptive management, they'll give you a couple permit terms. But when you run out of time, you're still stuck with the limit because the watershed won't meet its phosphorus. So it buys you time. Only a handful of communities or districts in the state have done that. New Water, very large staff. They hired a bunch of people. They're doing a lot of work in the watershed. But most communities like you guys have said that's really not, money well invested to solve these other issues that we have. And we still will face the jeopardy of a capital project to address phosphorus. Water quality trading, sometimes that's a good option if someone's close and there's another point source, another treatment plant that's nearby. You can trade with that other treatment plant. It's like, hey, can you give us 50 pounds or something like that? And it takes the edge off. That's a pretty good option. But for you guys, there aren't other, if we look at where you're sitting in the watershed and who you could trade with, there really isn't a good trading partner, another treatment plant that you could trade with. So the other option then is you could trade with a bunch of landowners, farmers, and it would take about 900 acres. That's bigger than a section. That's a lot of land. That's a lot of trades. You would probably have to hire staff. You would have to pay those farmers for that trade. Probably could cost, by the time you add staff and you pull off these trades, $150,000 annually. It also does not, all that investment does nothing to address the other issues: condition, obsolescence, complexity, flexibility concerns. Okay, you still have that plant. Okay, so we talked about each of those briefly in a previous conversation here, and I don't think the community felt that that was the right way to use today's money. It doesn't solve the problem tomorrow. And then finally, we looked at one that was focused just on phosphorus, and that was to add an effluent filter to your existing plant. Okay, we would leave everything the way it is, and we would just add another building that would house chemical mixing and flocculation, the process you need to meet this limit. Okay. It's not ideal because of the fact that you have fixed film. Adding a filter downstream, that type of filter downstream of fixed film isn't really ideal. And you would be adding to the complexity. You'd be adding yet another unit process, or 3 unit processes. You would have to pump it again a fourth time. Most plants just pump it once. You guys pump it 3 times. You'd have to add another pumping station. You'd have to have chemical mixing and flocculation, and you'd have to have filters. We did look at that in the PCAP, and I think the community said that it's a lot of money, but it doesn't solve all these, and it doesn't solve any of these other issues. So that was not carried forward in the facility. We acknowledged it, but it wasn't carried forward because we were looking for an alternative, or a number of alternatives that addressed all these different issues. So that brings us to the 3 alternatives that look at all 4 of those issues, the full facility alternatives. and the generational investments. The alternatives that are going to address all these issues and get ready for another generation of service and ideally well beyond. So the first alternative is alternative 5. What we're showing is a site plan. And what color do they look like? Kind of that teal color is highlighting all of your existing buildings, all of your existing infrastructure. All of those would be upgraded. The equipment would be replaced. The electrical gear would be replaced. We added the replacement of a bunch of the pipes that get flow from one place to the next, and all the construction cost for all the sequencing and bypass pumping that would be required for that. The intention of this alternative is to give you all new equipment and retain the infrastructure, the structures, with the idea that all 3 of these alternatives are really intending to set you up for the next generation and beyond. That's what that alternative is. It's a completely, this old house rehab of your existing infrastructure. Okay. There's one structure that would be removed, and that's the circle in purple. Purple up there, yeah. And that's where we would, and it's the only place we could put it on your existing site. That's where we would build the pump station, chemical mixing and flocculation, and the filter. So if you were to move forward with that, you would achieve compliance with the phosphorus limit. You would have a new filter system, but it would keep your existing plant as it's configured. Okay, it would actually make your complicated facility more complex. You would continue with your current dilute Class B liquid biosolids program. One thing that it doesn't mention here is it would not set you up for biological phosphorus removal or biological nitrogen removal, so you don't have the flexibility to accommodate a future nitrogen. And that's important because if that, when that day comes, the only way you would meet that nitrogen limit is if you added yet another process to this that removes the nitrogen. Okay. So you make a complicated facility more complicated, and in the future we get more complicated yet to meet a nitrogen. Guys, I'm buzzing through this stuff pretty quickly. You interrupt if you have any questions. So let's look at the non-economic advantages and disadvantages of alternative 5. It's again, this is this old house upgrade where we add filtration. So it would comply with phosphorus. It would replace or rehabilitate your existing infrastructure and equipment. And it has, relatively speaking, still a lot of money, relatively speaking, its capital cost is lower than the other alternatives. We'll spend more time talking about costs in a little bit. Its disadvantages: doesn't address the obsolescence and complexity. Okay, your plant is still designed for a previous era. It lacks the liquid train flexibility, the stuff that treats the water to meet a future nitrogen limit. It lacks solids train flexibility to deal with the challenges associated with your Class B liquid biosolids program. Far more construction risk. Those of you that, we talked about this when we were down at the plant. Think about sequencing all of this work and keep an existing plant running while you're replacing a whole bunch of stuff. Anytime you're doing rehab work like this, the probability for change orders is much greater. And then you'll see in a little bit, but this would actually have the highest operating cost annually. Okay. Alternative 6. Those of you that remember these conversations, I did change the numbers a little bit from the PCAP. Yeah, because I wanted to make sure we did those 4 alternatives, and then we really plowed all the ground necessary for alternative 5. So forget the numbers that we talked about before, and remember alternative 6 is a new facility with Class B biosolids. Okay, this is what we're showing is, and so we've been working with your team. Our team has been working with your team to develop preliminary drawings and a preliminary design for this alternative, as well as the next one that we're going to talk about. So alternative 6 and alternative 7 we've developed a preliminary design, and the reason for that, and what we talked about before, is to make sure we've got far better cost certainty for these different alternatives than we had when we did the PCAP. The only way you can really get into and increase your cost certainty is if you get into the details, take some soil borings, look at where you need piles, work with staff, and come up with a plan to meet all the different requirements. And, you know, to give you a sense of in round numbers, the PCAP is done in about 200 hours. And now we've spent about 3,000 hours, different engineers, helping us make sure we've got, because there's going to be a public hearing at some point. We want to be able to stand up in front of God and country and the public and have as much certainty as we can about the construction costs. A lot of decisions need to be made and a lot of information needs to be unearthed before we can have that type of confidence. That's why we've spent the time and energy that we have to get to this point. So this is a drawing that's a product of that work. And I'll just give you a quick, can you see that? So up here is your existing pump station. We'll rehab that. I think that was built in 07, Ben, is that right? 2015, thank you. So that's fairly,
2007, sorry.
2007 is when that pump station was built. We're gonna rehab that, run a force main. We're gonna pump that wastewater now to, we talked about this, you all probably remember the Sledding Hill conversation. We're gonna develop a new treatment facility in the Sledding Hill area. There's a headworks here. This is where we would provide screening and grit removal. From there, it would flow, if you can follow my cursor, to this selector. That's where we accomplished biological phosphorus removal. And with the design that we have, you're configured to meet a nitrogen limit in the future. So that's where we do our this is the business end of biological nutrient removal is in this selector. This is an oxidation ditch, that's activated sludge. So there's no more fixed film here. This is activated sludge. This is a very common, especially here in Wisconsin, system that provides biological treatment. These are two final clarifiers. This building, it would flow from these two final clarifiers to this structure. This is where we would add chemicals to enhance chemical particulate formation, chemical flocculation, chemical mixing. There's a filter in here, UV disinfection, and then we would flow out, the water would flow out through your existing outfall. You try to move an outfall with the DNR and you've got a tremendous permitting exercise on your hands. So we'll just tie it into the old outfall, okay? On the solids train for this alternative. So this alternative will produce Class B biosolids, just like you do today, except today you haul out around 3%, something like that. This would haul out probably 5.5%, much thicker. You're hauling much less water to the fields, okay? So it reduces the burden of your biosolids program, but it doesn't eliminate. So we would thicken the solids up. That would occur here in this building, and we would store those biosolids in these two large storage tanks. This is where we provide 180 days of storage. In this structure, we would temporarily hold the solids. I misspoke. We would thicken them in this structure, and then we would store them here in these two big tanks. Okay, but this is a modern day streamlined treatment facility, much simpler, much more in line with today's effluent limits, and one that's been tried and true all over the state. It really doesn't get any simpler than this. Here we're showing it in schematic form. What's in gray are those liquid train processes I talked about. What's in brown are those biosolids processes I talked about. Store the WAS briefly, you thicken it, and you put it in storage tanks, and a truck would haul that liquid to the fields like it does today. It would just haul less of it. Okay. Alternative 6 is a brand new facility with Class B biosolids, liquid biosolids. What we're talking about is making a conversion from a complicated process that has a bunch of fixed film in it, to one that doesn't have any fixed film. It has only activated sludge I think at a time like this, it's helpful to know, has anybody else done this before? This is a very common transition that a lot of your peers around the state have done. Everybody that I've listed here at one time, or they currently have a fixed film process, and they have converted their facility to one that no longer has fixed film. Okay. So a couple of them have asterisks. One is Reedsburg. Reedsburg was similar to you guys. They had a trickling filter because of their industry. Reedsburg is currently building a brand new facility. They're a little bigger than you guys, more around 3 MGD. You're about, an MGD is 1 million gallons a day. You're about 1 million gallons a day average. They're about 3. But they're building a brand new facility. They opened bids in 2024. Brand new facility, very similar. The process flow diagram is very similar to yours. They opened bids at $109 million in 2024. Jefferson, Wisconsin, they have fixed film. They're contemplating a change right now to only activated sludge. They're targeting $140 million. Again, they're a little bigger than you guys. Eau Claire, they had RBCs for years. Rhinelander had RBCs. Portage is under construction to convert from their RBCs. Again, RBCs is fixed film to activated sludge. The point for tonight is this isn't, you're not contemplating something that no one's ever done or people rarely do. It's commonly done when you get to this point in your life stage where you decide it's time to make an investment in kind of the modern era of technology, a modern treatment facility that can better accommodate today's effluent limits and those that we can expect in the future. So if we look at the advantages and disadvantages for alternative number 6, it'll achieve phosphorus, the phosphorus limit. This does address the condition of your existing facility, or most of your plant is 40 to 7 years old. It addresses the obsolescence and complexity. We talked about that. A streamlined facility incorporates biological nitrogen removal, better accommodating to better accommodate the future nitrogen limits. That's the liquid train flexibility. Construction risks, we talked about this at a previous meeting. That's why we went to the sledding hill, is it makes it much cleaner for a contractor and reduces the potential for change orders. As you'll see, it has a more favorable operating cost than alternative 5. Its disadvantage is it checks most of the boxes, but it still relies on this Class B biosolids program. Okay. And it's more expensive than alternative 5 as well. Those are the disadvantages. Alternative 7. Now, this is the one that we spent most of the time talking. It's finally getting there. What we've talked about most of the time. This is a brand new facility in the sledding hill. The liquid train is identical. The liquid train is identical to what I just went through. But on the biosolids side, we would temporarily waste our biosolids to these 2 tanks here, and then we would pump those to this building. This is where it makes Class A material. In this building, we would dewater them. We would squeeze a bunch of the water out of the solids, and we put it in a dryer, a heat dryer, and we would make a biosolids pellet, very, very similar to Milorganite, if anybody's put that on their lawn. Okay, that becomes an unregulated fertilizer product. Okay, and people that have put in dryers have found they work with local landowners, and the landowners say, I'll take all of that you've got. And so the hauling cost goes to 0. The landowner says, I'll come get it, and I'll bring it to my farm. Okay. In one instance, we helped Sheboygan put in a dryer. They're actually, I think, getting, they actually go out to bid, and I think they make about $150,000 a year or something like that. But it's not worried about the revenue yet. Your hauling costs go to 0. Okay, because it's an unregulated product. You don't have to keep track of it. You don't have to find fields. Farmers just come and get it. Again, here's the liquid train is identical. Again, B&R for biological phosphorus removal and someday biological nitrogen removal. Oh, I put the wrong schematic. Oh no, I didn't. We have temporary WAS storage. The brown is the biosolids. We have temporary WAS storage. We dewater it, we put it in the dryer, and then it goes into a trailer that a farmer could haul to their field. Okay. That's alternative 7. It'll achieve phosphorus compliance. It's a simpler facility. It's more efficient to operate. It's got the flexibilities for the future, and it replaces all your aging infrastructure and produces a Class A biosolids product. So, well, are we contemplating something that really nobody does? There was a time, and it wasn't that long ago, Milwaukee was the only facility in the state with a dryer. It had it since the 30s or something. But in the last decade, we've seen a lot of people get interested in biosolids drying and putting them in. And what we're listing here are facilities that either have dryers, they're under construction, or they're pursuing them through a facility plan. And you can see there's been quite a proliferation in the last 10 years for facilities. And not all of them are, Milwaukee and Green Bay and Kenosha. A number of those facilities are similar in size to New London. Okay. So if we look at the advantages and disadvantages for alternative 7, it really does check all the boxes except on capital cost. Okay. You'll see it's the most expensive capital alternative, but its non-economic advantages are really kind of across the board. It addresses all of those 4 concerns that we talked about at the start of the conversation. So if we kind of do a non-economic comparative analysis, here we show the 3 alternatives kind of lined up. Compliance, condition of your aging facility, obsolescence and complexity, liquid train, flexibility, that's to accommodate a future nitrogen limit, solids train, someday, biosolids, Class B biosolids could be prohibited. Well, in Maine, they don't allow it at all today. Your one salacious story, maybe won't be science that rules out Class B as an alternative. It'll be elected officials responding to something in the paper, something in the news, someone's got sick, that could, remove Class B as an alternative. Maine has eliminated it. Texas, Oklahoma are taking steps. If you have a Class B product, you only have 10% of the weight of the material that you could, even if they said no more biosolids on land, you're left with 10%, and it makes landfilling very, very cost effective. And then the construction risks, both of those 6 and 7 are built on a new facility, dramatically reduces the risks associated with construction. So here we get to costs. The top line are the construction costs. Okay, that's what we would expect bids to be opened at. And you can see alternative 6 and 7, they've gotten closer than they were during the PCAP. A couple reasons for that. One of them is we've got 365 days of biosolids storage on piles. It's a big, robust system. That the cost of alternative 6 got closer to alternative 7. That's one of the reasons they got closer. I was personally have been doing this a long time. I was surprised number 6 was as close to 7. But if we look at a year's worth of storage on those soils on that site, it brought them closer than I thought it was going to be. But I think it accurately reflects the situation. Those aren't great soils out there. Those are very heavy tanks, and it requires a lot of infrastructure to support them, piles and piers. The next line is the total project capital cost. That's the construction cost plus engineering. So that is representative. The total project cost is probably along the lines of what you're going to submit in your Clean Water Fund application and what would be funded through your loan. Okay, and that's the number that we use to produce our rates that we're going to look at in a little bit here. I think the annual O&M cost is interesting. Okay, so this is representing, our best estimate of what it's gonna cost to run these different facilities. And you can see that 6 and 7 are more cost effective, not a big surprise. Pump it 3 times, you use all chemical treatment, you're hauling a lot of liquid to the fields, about $200,000 a year. But I think it's important for everyone to see that if you were to make this investment, you'd be making it a facility that's more efficient, more cost effective. This number here, the next one, the annual replacement fund contribution, that's a tough pill to swallow, frankly, because your rates have to cover that amount. But one of the conditions of a clean water fund loan is you need to be putting money in a fund for the replacement of the equipment that's going in that project. And the intention is, I think someone knew that maybe the SRF program wouldn't be around forever. This is your rainy day fund, builds up over time, and you can use that for maintenance on the facility to, replace equipment as it wears out. Okay. But that's a lot of money, but it's a DNR requirement. It's well-intentioned, you'll have millions of dollars in there someday when you have to do something else at your facility, something breaks down and you need to replace it. That's what that line is there, replacement fund contribution. That's a clean water fund requirement. Salvage value. This is something that the department requires when you do it. The most important thing for the department when they say, look at the life cycle costs of these different alternatives. And in the context of the 20-year life cycle cost, that's when you make your economic decision. Okay, the department most looks at that bottom line, that 20-year total present worth. Let me explain what that is. 20-year total present worth is the amount of money that you need in the bank to fund the building and the operation of your facility for the next 20 years. Okay. How much money do you need in the bank today at interest rate that the DNR defines for you to cover all the costs associated with the facility for the next 20 years? The salvage value in the DNR, we don't always include this in the analysis because sometimes for alternatives it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But for this, it does. When you've got a lot of old stuff and you're building new stuff, I think it does add value. The salvage value isn't so much salvage value; it's the remaining value at the end of that 20-year period. So we looked at all the infrastructure that's associated with alternatives 6 and 7, and we said I was very conservative. I think we could have pushed it more. I said, all that's going to last 40 years, and we're only 20 years through. Okay, so there's 50% of the value remaining. For alternative 5, we didn't provide any salvage value, any future value for your 40 to 70-year-old structures. The only thing that we gave credit for is your new building, the one with the filter. Okay, it's a very consistent, common way that it's done, but it does reflect the fact that when you get to the end of your 20-year period, your 6 and 7 still have a lot of remaining value. Okay, and so I do think for this analysis, it's entirely relevant. DNR wants to see it done this way, and what that does then is it makes all of these present worth values very, very similar. Okay, the DNR will say, if it's all within 10%, do what you want. Okay. DNR says if it's within 10%, you can pick the alternative that you feel is in your best interest. And that's where we're at here. 5, 6, and 7, similar total present worth. I think the community is in a position between these 3 alternatives to pick the one that they feel is right for them. Any questions on that? That's an important point. The DNR really zeroes in on this total present.
If they're gonna make all these regulations and change them, is there any possibility that you can get more money because they're doing this?
Yeah, none of us like the unfunded mandates. So they gave you a phosphorus limit. We've all seen how expensive that phosphorus compliance is. They're going to give you $1 million. When the day comes and you need to do something for nitrogen, for instance, they might give you some, but they don't give you near enough. The days of, one thing, you know, that a lot of your stuff was built in 87. There was a lot of grant money back then. Those days are gone. I think one of the things to keep in mind, to your point, is they'll never give you enough money to meet these limits. Most of the money is coming from the service area. And I think you want to be good stewards of everyone's money, because in the future it's coming from here. However, Chad and your mayor have already talked to the elected official, your your representative for the area, Tony Weed, and I forget the other gentleman. Oh, thank you. One thing that is in vogue today that everyone's doing, the DNR hates it, is they are working with their federal legislators, and it's back in vogue in Washington, D.C. to provide some money for the communities. And, you know, I can give you some La Crosse. I think La Crosse got about 3 million. Eau Claire got about 3 million. Wausau got 1.6. We can look around the state at other communities where the federal government has said we will give. Oh, we're working in Oshkosh. They got $3.1 million. The gateway to more money, we call it special funding, is to work with your legislators. We want to help you guys. It means the most by far if individuals from the community are talking to those elected officials, and they are, and we want to support you guys and provide whatever narratives and information you need. In this day and age, as we sit here today, the way to get some more is to work with your federal elected officials. I'm not saying right or wrong, it's just what is today. That you can, I think we're hopeful that there'll be some more. Does that answer your question? It was a really long answer. They'll never give you all the money you need to meet these limits that they give you. That's, I think we can say that with certainty. Does the cost analysis make sense? This kind of the bottom line is that total present worth. How much money you need in the bank to cover all your costs for the next 20 years.
So to get 3.1 million, we have to save $700,000 a year after that for 20 years.
What's that? Say again?
The annual replacement fund contribution.
Yeah.
How long does that go? 20 years?
20 years till your loan is paid off. Yeah.
It goes until the loan's paid off, and we're looking at a 30-year option, correct?
Oh, yeah, that we might be able to tweak that a little bit because of your 30-year option. Yeah, it does go until your loan is paid off.
Well, just
Yeah.
answer everybody's question. We'll have the money in the bank to fix it.
You'll have a lot of money in the bank. You'll have a lot of money in the bank.
Yeah. Mhm.
So it hurts today, but it sets the community up, you know, really well a couple years down the road. So here we look at, you know, we've kind of focused on the total project cost. There is a difference between 5, 6, and 7. 7's the most expensive, but if we consider what these costs could look like down the road, if you need to produce a Class A biosolids product because Class B is prohibitively expensive, or it's no longer an option, or they give you a total nitrogen removal limit that we've talked about, then the math looks something like we're showing here. Whereas alternative 5 is lower to begin with, but to add a dryer in the future, and I put all of these in 2026 dollars, okay? The escalation on construction costs is outstripping inflation, but I've trued all this up to 2026. So here's alternative 5, but let's say 10 years from now, you need to put in a dryer. You would add what's in blue, and then I think you probably have to add another 10 or 12 million dollars to meet a future nitrogen limit. So that is one perspective. Alternative 7, Class A, already able to meet a total nitrogen limit. That Alternative 7, you're spending more, but it could be viewed, some could say that's a hedge against these other things that could be coming down the road. And they're never going to give you all the money to do those other things you have to do. Does that make sense? So what is the facility? The facility plan, in a lot more words, I've talked a long time, but in a lot more words, really gets to the same place, that alternative 7 checks all the boxes. No matter what this community does, it's a huge, huge investment. But 7 is the hedge against those things that could happen in the future. And it's the right, the facility plan says, you all are going to decide if you agree with that, but the facility plan says alternative 7 is the right long-term investment, multi-generational investment for the community. Okay, with what we're showing there, with that logic, that it checks all the boxes for today and tomorrow. Something that really is important. So what do user rates look like for alternative 7? And I'd like to say, I want to make clear that for alternative 7, well, really all the alternatives. So here we are, our team started pulling these costs in April of 26. And we're going to open bids. We're going to open bids around April of 27, Q1 of 27. Okay. The construction cost index itself for just concrete, lumber, general building construction, that went up 4.2% in the last year. Here we've got a lot of big electrical gear and a lot of equipment. So we have added, for the rate analysis, we have added, I don't want to do this, but I also don't like cost surprises. Those are the worst kind of surprises. I added 6% to the value that was in the facility plan. Okay, that's 76 million. I added another 6% for next April to establish the rates. But the spirit of that is to put together a rate structure or a rate perspective that stands the test of time, that is intact in April of next year. Okay, so I want everyone to know that deliberately have the thumb on the scale from a cost standpoint, added 6% for the cost of construction costs going up. And here we see where we were in the PCAP for alternative 7. Then we put that cost together. Our team started to pull that number together in like April of 25. And then we bring that forward. That's grown $4 million just for the passage of time. Full disclosure, there were some things that were added scope-wise that I didn't get into the project. That's that $3 million. I didn't have, when we went to the new site, I didn't have a brand new admin building. I didn't have grit removal because we were going to do it a different way. But New London's got some grid issues. So what we're seeing here is the cost of time and a couple of things that I wish were in the project originally. I also didn't anticipate so many piles. These structures are on. So there's a little bit of scope creep, but it's real. A bid opening a year from now will cost more than a bid opening today, and we're trying to guard against a cost surprise because of that. So I used those 2027, those projected 2027 costs to build this rate table. Y'all are going to work with your rate consultant, but and they're going to come up with the final numbers. But we do this a lot, and I think we've got a pretty good sense of what it's going to cost to cover the debt. I think another thing that we need to talk about is, let's say you advance today with alternative 7, any of these alternatives. You won't make your first principal and interest payment until the first May 1 after construction is completed. Okay. So if we go back to that schedule, if you remember, construction bled through most of 2030. So you won't have to make your first full principal and interest payment until 2031, May 5th of 2031. You can leverage that to ratchet in these rate increases. We talked about this before. You increased rates from 25 to 26, started that process. So from where you are today, you're at the average residential user, the average, there will be people higher, there will be people lower. The average residential ratepayer today pays $54 a month. In 2027, you could ratchet that up. Basically, we said from this point today to the end of 2030, let's implement 4 rate increases. So one from 26 to 7, it would go to something like $67 a month. From 7 to 8, $81 a month. 28 to 29, basically it's going up $14 a year. Excuse me, the monthly bill is going up $14 a year. And ending in 2030 at $109. Huge, big number, no doubt about it. But maybe the thing to look at, that's a big number, but the incremental cost, all of them are big numbers. Is the incremental cost worth the added benefits? I think that's, irrespective of what you decide, I think that's the lens to look through. Is the delta worth the value that comes with it?
You're saying that we don't have to make a payment till 2031, but you're raising the rates for 5-6 years. Does that money go into a slush fund or whatever, and then when that's built, does that go directly on principal? Does that help?
I want to clarify, you have to make your interest payments during construction, but not your principal and interest. So, year one, contractor is going to draw 30% out of the product, or 40%. You'll have to pay interest on that. And so you'll be using those rate increases to make those interest payments. And that your rate consultant needs to look at that cash flow, that situation. But this is a common approach that people take. Does that make sense? So this rate perspective was built assuming a spring of 2027 bid opening. I mentioned that I wanted to be clear that I did deliberately add 6% to get to 2027, that bid opening. And then what is the funding mechanism we spent? I didn't want to talk a lot about it tonight because we plowed that ground. We spent a fair amount of time with USDA. I did place another call with those guys. There is a scenario where maybe a little bit of the project on USDA is an advantage to you. If you do get some money from Washington, it comes out of the same pot as the SRF money. They just divert it directly to you guys. Despite long conversations with the DNR, they don't look. So this happened to Oshkosh. They got $2 million in principal forgiveness, and they got $3 million in congressionally directed spending. 5.1, they were thrilled. DNR won't let them use principal forgiveness and the CDS, congressionally directed spending, on the same project. It's possible that we could use a little bit of USDA money and launder the congressionally directed spending money through the USDA program, and then it doesn't poison the Clean Water Fund. There's some nuance there. It's kind of complicated. I would talk to the guys. We'll find a way to leverage whatever money we get from Washington. I guess I got sidetracked. We spent a lot of time looking at different funding options. I think the most favorable one is the Clean Water Fund, 1.485% and a 30-year loan. Not everyone can do a 30-year loan. You can because of the amount of infrastructure you're building. If you're just doing a project where you're replacing a lot of equipment, they don't let you take it to 30 years. Okay, this is like a mortgage. They're like, the life of this stuff is 60 years. So we can do a 30-year mortgage. And then we got a replacement fund that's really well funded to replace the equipment that's going to break. Okay. These are huge numbers, guys. But it's not just here in New London. Doing a major wastewater treatment facility project today It's expensive. You know, Black Creek, probably just up the road. Some of you probably know where Black Creek is. In February, they had a public hearing. They're looking at a project 24 to 35 million dollars. They're a lot smaller than you guys. Their rates, according to the public hearing, they were looking at a rate increase of 105 to 125, 150, 105 to 150 dollars. That's the increase. These aren't increases, what we're showing on the screen. This is the bill. Okay. Sonia, very small community, spent 20 million. Jefferson and Reedsburg are very similar to you guys. I think both of them are 2.5 to 3 MGD. You're 1 MGD, but you know, Jefferson's contemplating $140 million project. Do a lot of work in Minnesota. We're working with Red Wing. Another consultant did a facility plan at $140 million. They have a fixed film process, just like you guys, and they're making a conversion to the next generation. $140 million. Albert Lee's contemplating Minnesota, $100 million. Hastings, $120 million. Not a very big community. Pearl River's contemplating $160 million. And those last two, they weren't even doing anything with biosolids. The point is, when it's time to do a major wastewater project today, it's expensive. And you can see it gets more expensive every year. Construction cost escalations outpacing inflation. So what are the next steps? I guess y'all are in a position to, armed with this information, I'd be glad to answer any questions. Remember, the timing is important. September 30th, we need to meet that deadline for principal forgiveness. The thought process is provide the information, you select an alternative, you approve the draft facility plan for public notice. We'll provide the city with the version that's going to go out to the public. It's posted on the website. We go through a public notice for a couple weeks, and then on June 25th, we have a public hearing. And we have a quorum at that. You listen to the comments from the public, and then make your final decision. Say, we're moving forward with this alternative, submit the facility plan with the public comments to the DNR at the end of June. And at that point, then we get moving on final design. We need to get far enough so that the DNR can review this stuff by the end of September. And then ultimately, we're shooting for a bid opening. And so anyway, what needs to happen tonight? Ideally, you say, we're going to advance this alternative, and we're going to release the facility plan to the public and prepare for a public hearing.
How much would rates go up if we went with option number 5?
That's right here, 88. So you end up at
88.
88. So it's about a $20 a month delta.
I mean, I've been contemplating this for a while, and I don't see it in my mind if alternative 5 does any justice to the money wise. And when you look at 6 and 7, I mean, we're $8 a month extra. I mean, hypothetically, we don't know exactly.
Yeah.
But that's gonna reduce our chance of someday not be able to get rid of that class B or solids. By going with the 7, we're gonna be a dry Milorganite type mix. I think that for money spent, I mean, it's all big money.
It's all big money.
But I think in my mind, 7 seems to light up my interest a little more than the others. My opinion.
You know, your question, what is it with 5? That was really getting to what the point I was trying to make is is that delta, is the value in that delta worth it? That incremental cost. It's not 109 versus 0, far from it. Is that incremental cost worth the value that comes with that incremental cost?
Any other comments? Time to speak up.
I think that the criticism that we have heard on Facebook and from our constituents is that we did not plan far enough ahead. That we weren't saving money, that we weren't planning for the future, that we weren't doing the things that they feel that we needed to be doing. That, I think, was our biggest criticism that I heard. Alternative 7 takes care of all of that. All those complaints, if we go with 7, those complaints are now, we've done what they complained that we didn't do before. We'll be doing all of that. And alternative 7 also potentially provides an income that we haven't even talked about, because we're just not even there to talk about what we could do with those dry pellets. We just know that it's going to save us money on our operating costs every year, but we could end up making money.
You didn't put any revenue in here.
Correct. And that revenue could potentially bring those costs down for our people.
Regarding the alternative 7 and the sludge drying facility, the way you have it designed and built for our facility, is it large enough to accommodate some regional type acceptance so we can bring in more revenue that way to help pay for it? Or is it just built enough for our needs?
Yeah, and we didn't put, I guess we didn't factor in, the revenue. Omro is one that we had in mind as we were putting this together. So there is the ability to accept material, and we thought a lot about the nature of their material and how do we get it into the facility. But Omro is one specifically we had in mind, and this would be configured so that if there were other, you couldn't bring in Oshkosh, but you could bring in other small communities in the area and use your capacity to dry their material. Omro specifically, we talked about and counted on all the way through design.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was an opportunity, whether it's something we want to look at and deal with in the future, but
Yep.
Clintonville, Tobacco, Wywega, other facilities like that, if they don't dry already.
Yeah. We didn't reach out to others, but Omro's here, and then the infrastructure is there to accept those.
So it's just an option. For
Yep.
Any other comments?
I think we should go with number 7. That's the one we discussed last time.
Anybody else? I guess we're done with discussions. I would look for a motion to recommend to council on which plan.
I'll make a motion for Plan 7.
Motion been made for plan 7.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Dorsey and second by Mr. Ritchie to go with alternative 7 plan. I would approve and recommend to council with Donahue Associates for the final design of the wastewater treatment facility based off council approval wastewater treatment facility plan option, and that would be alternative 7.
No, it was the one before that, just the plan. Because the next one is actually for the final design. So it would be review final facility plan for wastewater treatment facility and recommend that design to council. Number 5.
Right.
So Dave made that motion and Bernie seconded.
Yep, so to review final facility plan for wastewater treatment facility and recommend design to common council, which is alternative 7. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now let's move to, approve and recommend.
On that note, I just want to thank Mike for all his work on this and coming, explaining this in depth many times. Leaving opportunity for any questions and the amount of work that went into that. And I appreciate your effort and staff.
Yeah.
That showed up today. And who couldn't make it, but there's a ton of work that went into this to get it to this point.
Thank you all for all your patience and hearing me out. It's been a pleasure.
Just to review the next step, so we're gonna be looking at a special city council meeting on the 25th.
Yep, I
This
was-
plan, so go ahead, sorry,
Oh.
jumped on you.
No, that's okay.
Yep.
So with this, and Mike kind of laid out the time frame on that. So today, we took the first step. Now, as part of that final design, or the final, to get that packet, we have to have that public hearing. So we're looking to get that out this week, which a public notice will go out on the 11th and the 18th, because it has to go out 2 weeks. And then we would look to have that special council meeting, public hearing, special council on the 25th of June. And that will be for both elements, approving this, that you just recommended, option 7 or design 7. And for the next element that we're gonna talk about, and that would be the final design number 6. They would both be after the public hearing on the 25th.
Is there gonna be a presentation again for design 7 for the public who shows up?
That is the customary approach. It's your public hearing, but it would be something, I would work with you all, but generally there's some sort of presentation so the public is informed.
You review all 3 plans or just go with the plan that we recommended?
I was envisioning we would show them all the feasible alternatives. And again, I think the most important thing is it's not 109 versus 0. I think it's a tremendous amount of money no matter what. Where's the best value? And so for that reason, I think we would go through all 3 alternatives. That would be my recommendation. Yeah. Without that, they could get the impression that it's $54 versus 109. It's not that.
88 versus 1.
Right.
Yeah, yet again, thanks, Mike.
Thank
Lot
you,
of work.
guys. I'm gonna excuse myself because you're gonna talk about me. Thank you all very much.
Okay, next we'll move into approve and recommend agreement with Donahue and Associates for final design of wastewater treatment facility based off the council's approval, wastewater treatment facility plan option.
Okay, for this one, I asked Mike just to get me the proposal for number 7, not knowing that you were gonna go with number 7. But we have that time frame, that extra time frame between now and the 25th, for that to change if need be. But that's why this line item is directly related to the facility plan that is chosen and recommended at this point. In your packet was that proposal for that number 7 option. As Mike stated, we're in this timeline right now where they have to produce a lot of this documentation and drawings in a short time frame to include that when they submit this to the DNR. As you can see on the last page, that kind of lays out the different phases, the 400 phase, the 500, 600, 700, the amount of hours that are assigned over those comes to what they're figuring around 14,000 hours worth of work to get it to and through bidding to the end. That's for everything that needs to be done, including help with the clean water funding applications, all of the design services, and the bidding of the project. With something this size, there will be a lot of reach out from contractors. There has already, because it's kind of been talked about. They've reached out, just doing the preliminary design and layout. And so there's gonna be a lot of questions once these plans are done. Through that 2 months of bidding, Mike kind of indicated that they would take that kind of time for a project this large for contractors to reach out and go through all those questions that they have. Does anybody have any questions about this, this proposal for design services? Carries us through this whole second phase.
Anybody have any questions on this? Seeing none,
It does, I'd like to highlight in case anybody did not see the overall cost of final design is estimated at $2.9 million. Which on average, on the low end, as Mike indicated, if a project is around 68 million, it would be 5.26% of the total cost. Or if this comes out more on the higher end, it's 4.93% of the total cost for design engineering. Wisconsin average 6 to 6.5.
any comments on that? Seeing none, if I hear none, we'll look for motion.
I'll make a motion to approve and recommend agreement with Don Associates for treatment plant facilities.
Motion been made. Second. Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, second by Mr. Dorsey, to approve and recommend agreement with Donahue and Associates for final design of the wastewater treatment facility based off the council's approved wastewater treatment facility plan option. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Let's move on to approve and recommend to council 2025 CMAR resolution.
Does anybody have any questions about the CMAR? As Mike went over mathematically, or we have gotten an A, but mathematically, when they do give us that new TMDL, we will not make it just because of our flows coming in and how old our infrastructure is. One of the whole reasons why we just had this hour-long meeting. But does anybody have any questions as to why we got these grades or anything CMAR related? Because we do have to pass a resolution that I have to submit to the DNR at the end of the month.
Anybody got any questions for Ben? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion, recommend a council 2025 CMR resolution.
Motion made by Mr. Dorsey, second by Mr. Barrington, to approve and recommend to council 2025 CMAR resolution. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, and I realize
this isn't the best. I don't know how to say it. It's a big project that's gonna be coming up and we appreciate going with the one we did. It's gonna make everybody's life much better in the future for our taxpayers or ratepayers and everybody. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment, to everybody at the wastewater treatment facility. It is amazing, considering the flood that hit New London, that our wastewater treatment facility didn't fail, that we maintained compliance. And that is a huge shout out to all of you who were down there, because I know you were down there working overtime and doing all the dang things to keep it running and compliant, and we didn't have any issues with our water in New London as a result. So huge shout out.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to recommended council 2026 transportation resolution.
Either or, you want to take it, I can take it. Your choice.
Go ahead.
All right. So in your packet is a transportation resolution. This comes from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. The league is encouraging all municipalities that are members of the league. They're using this to help provide more opportunities to go to the state legislators to help encourage more transportation aids in communities. They're showing that, you know, the infrastructure in Wisconsin, the levels, and we do that PACER rating every year. Statewide, those PACER rating numbers are continually going down, and the level of funding that's coming from the state isn't keeping up with that. So they're asking municipalities to help provide them with this resolution to give to the league, and as they go lobby to their legislators, they're going to provide this to try to ask for more funding for the local units of government. That's it in a nutshell. Robert, did I miss anything?
No, you did not.
Perfect.
Any further questions on that? Hearing none, I'd look for motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend to council 2026 transportation resolution.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Dorsey, second by Mr. Ritchie. To recommend to council 2026 transportation resolution. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next is approve and recommend the council proposal for CE or AECOM from environmental monitoring at Mini Park site. Yep.
Okay, back in it was 2023. So before the state project took effect, there was things that happened for this STP urban grant, the funding, the state-run project, where they investigate all potential sites that have environmental issues, being old gas stations, USTs, things of that nature. So they go by these maps from as far back as 1927, and any place on that map that indicates any type of petroleum distribution and or any environmental hazard, they do testing beforehand to see if when they're doing this excavating, digging, if there's the potential to run into issues, they want to know about it ahead of time. So in 23, they bored at 15 locations downtown. And out of those locations, we had 3 sites. There was more sites that came back contaminated, but were assigned to property owners because it was more so on property versus right away. But in this one, in this phase 2.5 investigation, the DNR issued the City of New London 3 responsible party letters. The location was Mini Park, and 2 locations on North Pearl Street, one by the Associated Bank parking lot and one that they labeled as adjacent to familiar grounds, but it was just a little bit more to the south than their building. Through the 2024 construction, the DNR was late getting back to us. This first stage was already completed, and we were moving towards the second phase of the downtown construction. That's when they contacted us. We went through this whole meeting where they discussed the 2 sites on North Pearl having tanks that were still there. So at that time, being that that was pre-construction, we did the site investigation, found that the location that was considered adjacent to familiar grounds did not contain those 4 tanks that they thought were still within the roadway, and took some sampling at that site, determined that that site could be linked to coils, and assigned that location to the old coil site, which is now closed. The one that was more north, and even with the Associated Bank parking lot, unfortunately, that's the one where the contractor went to put in the catch basin, and we ran into that UST right at that location where the map indicated that there was still a tank in the ground. That tank was removed, even though there was a bored natural gas line through it, and it was removed. The area around it was excavated and hauled to Outagamie County landfill. Samples were taken from all 4 sides, and then there was 4 locations where they dug test pits because this was all still open and under construction. They dug those test pits, sent the tests in, and just this April, it was actually right after the flood, we got good news from the DNR that issued a letter of no further action at that location. They were determining whether they wanted to put in monitoring wells or not, and with everything that came back through that process, they determined that no further action was needed, and now that is considered like a closed case for us. Which leads us to Mini Park. So the Mini Park site, back in the day, I don't know what year or on what map, but there was a gas station that was on this side of that building right there. It was a smaller one as indicated on the map, and through the phase 2.5 investigation, there was 2 points kind of where the sidewalk runs right now that tested over the limits for petroleum. So for continuing monitoring of this site and to determine the extent of spread from this site, they are having us put in 5 monitoring wells at the Mini Park location, kind of indicated. If you scroll a little more, there's one that's in that pedestrian harbor. I was talking with them. I'm trying to get that moved because there's natural gas running north-south, and I know we have one main electrical feed that runs right under that sidewalk because it was previously hit during construction. So I'm trying to have them relocate that to another area, but they want us to put in these 5 monitoring wells, do 2 rounds of testing, and from that determine if they can, or what we need to do going forward with this site from those locations and the testing that's done. I looked back at a little history, and I think the city took this on in 1971, I think is when it became city property. The map that I put in there from 1976 was kind of when that corner was reconfigured. Donahue did some work on that to make that turning lane, but as far as I know, it's been city property since 1970. And these plans were drawn up in 76 to make that turn lane. Being that that's city property and the DNR assigned us the responsible party letter to that, we have to go forward with monitoring the site to see if any of the potential contaminated areas where they took the 2 tests has migrated any further to the north or further out into the roadway.
How long do you think you'll have to monitor them?
I'm hoping that the tests that they take between the 2 stay consistent and they determine that it's not migrating or that groundwater isn't shifting this, and that we can go through that final, like we did at Associated Bank area.
The other option is to dig it up.
Yeah, you'd have to take out a large area and one, find the extent that the contamination runs. I mean, you're looking at a lot cost of your operation, plus taking out some of the new area that we did in 24. This comes with a hefty cost, as I indicated in my memo, around $40,000, which when I talk to Judy, we'll be having a capital meeting on Wednesday after finance to help cover the cost of this. And this is just to do all the work to get those monitoring wells in, to do the 2 rounds of monitoring and fill out all the paperwork for the DNR up to that point. If, and I pray that we don't, core through a UST or anything like that, it does not cover any of the costs for, once it's found, it has to be removed, so you have to go through that whole process. The maps that were produced did not show any existing tanks that were left in the ground, so I'm hoping that we don't have any surprises, but you just don't know.
You'd think they'd be all out there. There were gas stations on all 3 of them corners. You'd think that those would have been taken out with the other 2, hopefully.
Did they give you a timeline that has to be done?
I've been pushing this off as long as possible while we were working on those other 2 sites. And now it's come to the point where these semi-annual reports I have to fill out and send to them, they're at the point where we have to do something like this year. And AECom said that they would be able to get in here. I want to kind of wait until the bypass is back open and then start after that point. That way we don't have all that added traffic that we have to supply barricading for and all that. But it'll take place at some point, I'm thinking later July, if not August.
That's gonna take quite a while, isn't it?
They should have it done in 2 days as far as installing the wells. They go down about 20 foot. It's a 6-inch core that they go down with.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Hearing none, I'd look for a recommendation.
Make a motion to approve and recommend the council proposal for the environmental monitoring at mini parks.
I'll second that. Motion made by Mr. Dorsey, seconded by myself to approve and recommend the council proposed from AECom for environmental monitoring at mini park site. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Consider lease of right-of-way property to Blossoms and Bloom.
Let me take that one too.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we've been approached by Blossom and Bloom Greenhouse. I got the aerial map right here. Here is the greenhouse area that they have. If you notice, last year they started using the area to the east of their existing greenhouses for mum production. You can see that the right of ways corners are quite large in this area. I'm not sure how that developed or why. It must have been something to do with the railroad at the time. But the owners of the greenhouse approached us to see if they could utilize this corner of land here, the city's right of way, for mum production. Basically, their intention is to lay down some type of fabric on here and then just set the pots on top, put some type of watering system with it, and let the mums grow in pots. So they don't plan on digging. There are some utilities that are in this right of way, but that's their intentions when they came up to us. In your packet, there is a proposal with that we developed with our attorney Stegbauer, and just talks about, it's a lease agreement for right-of-way use. This is something that we found out that other communities do provide in certain situations. It kind of talks about, give some little examples of what the right-of-way description is all about. The renewals for this proposal would be that it would automatically renew on an annual basis unless there's a cancellation by either party 60 days. And then rent, the initial rent would be equal to what we're charging per acre of land for farmland up in the industrial park, which is right now is $115 per acre. Since that little triangle is about 0.4 acres, it will come down to $46 for the first and annual rent. But as we in the future change our rental rate for the acreage for farmland, we could adjust that rate with them as well. And if they don't accept our initial or our new rates, then they can cancel at that point in time. But that's the basis of the intentions and basis of the agreement in front of you. Any questions?
Why is that a right of way? It looks like it's just land.
Good question. It's part of the city's right of way.
I think back in the day, they tried to maintain the specified standards for vision triangles for the railroad. Because that kind of lines up
Yeah, that makes
with
sense.
what they had to do, or the area we had to clear out off of Industrial Loop Road. When the state reached out and gave the parameters for that vision triangle for the train. So I think back when that was established, they were thinking, if it's all right away, then we won't have an issue with clearing that out if it ever did grow up.
So if they did use that space, is it gonna be an issue with the railroad?
Nope. They're only concerned about anything that would obstruct vision to the track. And with what they said they were gonna grow, it wouldn't be over 30 inches high, which keeps that whole vision triangle wide open.
And we have in here right now that the plants shall maintain a height not less or not more than 36 inches just to maintain that vision triangle. So we've specified that in the agreement.
Have any of you guys been out back there and seen the mums growing coming out in the season?
I was wondering what they were.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat operation.
a lot going on.
They get about knee high. Platforms and just watering.
It's not really that close to the railroad tracks. Cause there's the power plant or the substation is there and that road running, it's still west of that road.
Do they have that on the Beacon Street intersection as well, right away like that?
No,
I don't think so. No.
Just strange that they have it at that one.
Wasn't there an old bridge there at one time, or is that somewhere else, the High Street Bridge?
Otherwise, I recommend you sell it to them.
No,
We've got some
you
utilities. in
sell
there.
it to them. Are you going to affect what's underneath?
no, not from a utility standpoint, and they said that all their utility, electric is the one that kind of borders that right away the most. And, Jay did not have an issue with them. And it's in the lease, if utilities needs to get to it, they have full right to that utility. Our sanitary runs down the middle of, High Street and then goes straight up, that gravel path. Can't remember, River, I can't remember that road.
This one? Which one?
That, that right away right there where your cursor is, still considered,
Oh, Ridgeway.
yeah, Ridgeway. And they said they were gonna stay, 10 to 12 foot off that gravel edge towards their property and 10 to 12 foot off of, High Street as well. So that takes water out of play also.
Any further questions? I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to consider leasing that to Blossoms.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, seconded by Mr. Dorsey. Consider lease of right-of-way property to Blossoms Blue. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Director's report, Mr. Garst.
I have 2 service anniversaries, Ted Christian, facility superintendent, 11 years, that was on May 11th, and Jared Jarvis was here, wastewater operator, 12 years, yesterday. This day, 2 days ago. We were going through the topo work out on Mill Street. McMahon was out there some last week. They're gonna finish up. I didn't have a chance to run out there today to see if they were finished up or not. That's pretty much identifying curb lines, crown elevations. It pretty much is the initial map out of that whole area for that project that's coming up in 27, 28. As far as continual work out there, I think I pretty much did all the stormwater aspect of it last week. So that's kind of taken care of. It'll go more into the drawing phase back at McMahon. So there shouldn't be too much more activity out there in a short time. The final layer of asphalt, I actually talked with Ian from MCC today. They have now moved that a little bit. They're thinking Tuesday, the 9th, and Wednesday, they will be doing all the prep work out on Oshkosh, milling around the structures, the butt joints, pretty much everything they need to do to prep and clean up. And then they'll pave Thursday. They're thinking one long day of paving. During the prep time, they'll try to keep as much of that open as possible for cross traffic and such, but during paving, that will be a full closure. Expected to last that day and a half window. For the surface layer, they will paint all the stop bars and anything, stop bars, the pedestrian crossings, they'll do that under traffic with, coned off areas. And I'm currently, as I said, my memo, putting together numbers, for some work on High Street. It's actually just a little bit down from the area that we're talking about. It's more in between the Amcor plants. There's a large settled trench, especially right where most pedestrians cross from parking lot to plant. It's really starting to deteriorate, alligator, break up. There's opportunity that there is some funding in TID 6. So I've spoke with Judy and we're in the process to see how much is available that I could use towards fixing this pretty bad area. That would include, we have 2 catch basins that need work in that area. So it would fix those at the same time as the 2 ped ramps there are in really bad shape too. But to get that asphalt work and concrete work done, I'd like to group that with the asphalt patch program. That way, there's more opportunity, more work for one company to come in and bid on, maybe give us a little better bid on total work there. And that's pretty much all I have. Does anybody have any questions for me about anything?
Couple things on Oshkosh Street. I know we talked about during our preliminary design about looking into maybe stop sign, an extra stop sign here and there. Has that ever been looked into more? Or is that gonna be something we're gonna wait till the road's done and then monitor it?
Being that it's classified as a collector street, I wouldn't recommend putting more stop signs out there. It kind of defeats the purpose of classifying it as a collector street. However, if it is chosen to do so, if the public comes forward and thinks that that is the way to slow down traffic there, it would definitely be in this board's hands to.
I just recall there was a few questions that was brought up about that when we had little, Greek talks here.
Yes, and I've had several since.
Okay.
They reached out and asked, and I told them that their best way to communicate that is to bring it before this board and address their concern or give their options of where to place more stop signs if that's what they think will slow down traffic, or come forward with other ideas.
One more thing on that is, I drive that street a lot. When you get to Oshkosh and Wolf River Avenue by that church. Yeah, well, I was going through there yesterday. The cars are parked right on that corner, on the Wolf River side of it. You can hardly
For the
see.
church.
Yeah, you can hardly see.
I've had conversations with Jose about, and provided a layout design for him where they would come in and exit only towards Oshkosh Street, and then they could angle park towards the building. That would open up that right away, that county right away.
It was
Provide more vision.
It was actually pretty bad the other day. I mean, it just seems like we got more traffic with all the bypass stuff closed, and then they had a big lift truck on that side, on the west side, that was literally right on the corner. Where that gravel parking lot.
On that.
Literally right on that corner. And it was tough to see.
I can have that conversation with him. He'd be fine to have that set back.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else got anything else? Future agenda items.
There's a guy out in a trailer park. They were wondering if they can get a no through traffic sign going into the trailer park. Cause that's all private property. And they got guys going through and just turn the trailer park.
Right at, on Henry where it runs in
Yeah.
before it goes in there.
Yeah.
I would have to look at, cause there's a lot of opening there for that. That's the pallet place, correct? Yep,
Yeah.
just to make sure I don't place a sign where they have overhead doors or anything.
Well, would it be? Oh yeah, I'd probably be here then.
I'd almost have to go. I would entertain that with the cost. If they wanna provide the post and sign. Like I've done in other areas. But I'll have to get out there and, look at it to make sure that I wouldn't be. I think I could put it far enough to the west where it wouldn't interfere with their traveling in and out of the factory there.
So even the road that runs north and south there on North Shore Village, that's their property, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Just have utilities running through there.
Okay.
Straight north, south.
Anything else?
For the special city council meeting on the 25th, start time. Would 5:15 be okay with everybody in attendance, just because it might be a longer meeting again? Looking, tonight took quite a bit of time.
I think we should try to do it 5:15 if we get any public comments.
Just because, if we start later, it's gonna just be a really late night, so.
Everybody good with that?
And that will be for both the final design approval after the special, or after the hearing. It'll be for that, and then for that number 6 item that was on here for the final design element for Donnie.
What were the hearing dates again?
Well, it'll be
25th.
on the 25th of June is the date when the hearing, and then, well, that's all in one.
Okay,
with
just wanna make
special
sure
common
everybody-
council.
Everybody realizes that.
Is there a planning?
So it'll
commission
be
meeting
items
after?
5 and 6 will be on the comment, is what you're saying.
We were talking about moving plan commission because this is the first date that gives you the opportunity, because Robert's gonna send it to the paper. So he can only get it, because he's gotta submit by Monday. We can't do today anymore for this Thursday. So it's gotta be posted on the 11th and the 18th in the paper. So 1 week later would be the first opportunity to have this public hearing on the 25th. We also talked about maybe doing the special city council meeting the week of the 29th, but that's technically a holiday week with the 4th of July, so we didn't know if people would be gone. Or it's probably not best to have a public hearing a holiday week, just to not give people the opportunity to come, so that's why we targeted the 25th. We're looking at possibly having a special plan commission meeting this Thursday. I'll find out on Wednesday if Austin's coming back into work on Thursday to send that out. But then if we need to have another plan commission meeting, we're just gonna have to do a special plan commission meeting somewhere where everybody can agree to that, so.
So it sounds like we're good with the 5:15 for the 25th?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So for the special council meeting, it will be addressing items 5 and 6 up here.
Correct.
Thank you.
Future agenda items? I think we got enough on the plate that we'll have plenty to go through. Anybody else got anything else? The next Board of Public Works meeting will be July 6th at 5:15. There should be no problems. If nobody's got anything else, I'll look for motion for adjournment. Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, second by Mr. Dorsey for adjournment. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.